Hey everyone, Bill Lethman here with Money Evolution. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about your 2023 401k strategy. So in today's video, I'm going to be hitting on 5 really quick points here to help you get the most out of your 401k for 2023. First of all, I'm going to be talking about how much money you can contribute to a 401k. So we're going to be talking about some of the new updated contribution limits for 2023, how they compare to 2022 from last year. I think some people are going to be surprised by what some of those upper limits actually are. We're also going to be talking about how much money should you be saving into your 401k. So a little bit about some of the goals that you have and how much money you need to be saving to get some of your retirement goals. We're also going to be talking about Roth or traditional. So that's one of our basic options. I think most 401k plans now offer both a Roth option and a traditional option. We're going to be talking a little bit about investing. This is going to be a real deep dive on that, but we're going to be talking about some of the investment, some special accounts that you may have eligibility for inside your 401k plan that you may not know about. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about rollovers, when you should do a rollover and what are some of the options that you should consider if you're thinking about rolling over a 401k plan to an IRA account. Okay, so let's jump into some of the details. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how much you can contribute to your 401k plan. And there's a couple small changes here for 2023 versus what they were in 2022. But the first thing, we still have that same number from last year, that $22,500 as our base contribution level, how much of our money can go inside the 401k plan. No change from 2022. And again, that can go into either Roth or traditional. You can split that up or combine it. It is a combined level, so it's $22,500 total. Unfortunately, not $22,500 for Roth and another $22,500 for traditional. However, you want to split that up or all into one or the other. If you're 50 years old or older, they did increase the catch-up provision to $7,500, so that's up $1,000 from what it was in 2022. And that brings the grand total on this up to $30,000 for your base contributions that you can put into the retirement plan. Now, some of you may remember from some of my past videos that there is an upper threshold that the IRS allows for the total contributions going into these retirement plans, and they call that the maximum annual contribution limit. And they did make a little bit of a revision of that, mainly because of the increase to the catch-up provision there. But if you're 50 years old or under 50 years old, I should say, that number is $66,000 for 2023, and if you're 50 years old or older with that catch-up provision, it's $73,500. And so what that's going to be is it's going to be a combination of your base contributions, which we'll say is $22,500 on that. And then let's say if you have any match, so if your company's putting any money in on your behalf, and I'm going to kind of make this math work out pretty easy here. So we're going to say, let's say the company's putting in $3,500 into that. So we're going to basically subtract that. That's going to leave you with an additional $40,000 that you can contribute to an account, if it's available, called an after-tax savings account. Now, not all 401k plans have this, but we're finding that maybe, according to some publications, maybe about 40% or so, maybe higher in some cases, may have an eligibility for this after-tax account. And what that allows you to do is to save beyond these initial contribution limits into an after-tax bucket. So the way it works is, let's say you want to put $10,000 into an account. You don't get any immediate tax deduction from that, but that $10,000 grows tax deferred, which means that at some point down the road, if you were to, let's say, double that over some period of time, and you go to pull that money back out, you would have essentially $10,000 of it, which would be ordinary income. That's how all money coming out of a 401k, if it's traditional, works. Ordinary income. And then you'd have $10,000, which is basically a return of your contribution. So that money's already been taxed. So that's kind of how it works, and that's how it worked for many, many years up until 2014. So not that recently anymore, but we've had this law for a while that now allows you to take these after-tax dollars that are in this plan, and you can now roll that over to a Roth IRA. So basically the way we advise our clients to do this in many circumstances there is they make these contributions throughout the year, and then periodically, depending on what your plan allows, some plans are more restrictive than others. Some plans you may only be able to do this once a year. Some plans you may be able to do it once a month or once a quarter. But before this account essentially gets built up, we're going to move that $10,000 or some portion of that to your Roth IRA account. And if we're just moving our contributions, it's a non-taxable event. So it is another way that we can do an extra contribution into a Roth IRA account and basically surpass some of the other restrictions that you have on a normal Roth IRA account, like the income restrictions and the low dollar contribution that you have for a Roth contribution. So that whole process is something we've often referred to in the past as a mega backdoor Roth IRA. And it really has the ability to really supercharge things, and especially if you're in that position where you have the higher amounts. Where am I going here? That $73,500, and depending on how much your company may be matching, really can give you a pretty good opportunity to get a lot more money saved for retirement and really do it in a very tax efficient way. And the Roth IRA account, is one of my favorite vehicles for doing that. The second thing we're going to talk about here is we're going to talk about how much money should you save. And that's a little bit different, okay? And so this is something that I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail here in this video. I've talked about it in the past quite a bit. But what I mean by this is just because you can save, let's say, $73,000 in a 401k plan, and you can do Roth contributions maybe if you're eligible and save money in after tax, there's got to be some balance. And that's something that I am a very firm believer in, is having a balance of how much money you're saving for the future versus how much you're living and spending money for today. So many times we see clients that have done a very, very good job saving money, and they've accumulated these great portfolios. They start planning for retirement, and they start talking about all the things that they want to do in retirement, but they really could have been doing a lot of that stuff along the way. So if there's big trips and things that they want to do, they want to include their family in some of these things or help their kids or grandkids out with some financial things. Those are things that you don't have to wait until you die or wait until later in life to maybe experience that. So think about how much money you should be saving. The best way to do that is really to do a financial plan, or at least if nothing else, to do some calculations and figure out how much money you have today in total savings. So we'll say savings today, and then look at how much money you're contributing, plus contributions. And then apply some growth rate to whatever you think your accounts are going to grow to over time using a very simple financial calculator. You could say, I have $1 million today, and I'm earning 5% on average, and contributing between all of our accounts $30,000, and 10 years away from retirement, whatever your goal is, that's going to be worth X dollars. And then you can start to say, okay, well, based on that, maybe using some simple rules of thumb, like maybe the 4% rule, which is a great, just a great way to just say, okay, if I have a pool of money, how much money can I take out of that account? Still have a pretty good chance that money's going to last me for a long time. The 4% rule has been a pretty constant there. Some people like to use it a little bit less. Sometimes I like to use numbers a little bit less than that. But the way that works is if you have $1 million at retirement and you're retiring, let's say at age 65, the 4% rule says you could take out $40,000 per year out of that $1 million portfolio and have a pretty good chance that that's going to last you for the rest of your life. Then you could start adding that up with other things like pensions and your Social Security benefits, and then see, okay, well, based on what I have now, what I'm currently saving, using that 4% rule or a 3% rule, whatever you want to do, I'm going to have $150,000 or $200,000, whatever that number may be, of retirement income, and then say, well, where does that kind of fit with where I am today? And say, well, gosh, that might be more than what you actually have right now in terms of what you're spending, especially if you are doing all of this saving. You may be making a lot more money, but because you're putting so much money in those retirement accounts, you may be actually forecasting a higher amount of income or disposable income in retirement than you are while you're working. So that's why I think taking a look at this and having a financial plan really can kind of help map that out a little bit and really sort of give you the green light to say, hey, maybe I don't have to be quite as aggressive with my saving. And just because you can save those big numbers into the retirement plans doesn't mean you should be doing that. Of course, there's the whole flip side of that. Maybe you're behind on your retirement savings and you need to be playing catch up with that because of whatever the circumstances may be. So just know where you're at and do some basic financial planning. You can kind of create that balance, see where you are today versus where you might want to be in the future based on all those different projections. Number 3 is going to be Roth or traditional, and that's a big one. And this is something that I've made a lot of videos about, and a lot of other people have as well, and a lot of people are talking about this. And basically when we're talking about Roth or traditional, we're talking about a choice that we have when we're depositing or saving money into our 401k plans. Do we want to take a tax deduction up front, take that off of our current income, but pay taxes later, not only on that money that we contribute, but any growth that we might get as well, and what our tax bracket's going to be in the future? Or do we pay the taxes now today and then get tax-free withdrawals later? And we get tax-free not only on what we put in and already pay taxes on, but we also get tax-free on the growth of it as well. And what I've said over and over again as we're making this decision, the biggest question is, what is my tax bracket today versus what is my tax bracket going to be in the future? So if we think our tax bracket today is really high and our tax bracket in the future might be a little bit lower, it's going to be better for us to take the tax deduction up front, and then we'll pay taxes later when we might be in a lower tax bracket. But again, the opposite may be true too. We may be in a situation where maybe because we've done a great job saving or different things, whatever our situation is right now, where we could be in a higher tax bracket in the future. A lot of people, including myself, think taxes are going to go up in the future just based on some of the big government debt that we have been accumulating here in the U.S. and have to, at some point, I think, pay for that. And that might mean higher taxes pretty much across the board. One thing we also know is that the current tax rates that we have today, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act rates, those are going to expire in 2025. So in 2026, we're going to revert back to the old 2017 tax table, which pretty much across all income tax brackets is going to be higher brackets for everybody. So understanding this is really the big key question here on Roth versus traditional. But to kind of illustrate this a little bit better, let's say that we're looking at making a $10,000 contribution, and we're deciding whether we should put that into a Roth or we should put that into a traditional. And let's say for this purpose we do it the traditional way, and we don't pay any taxes on that up front. We end up growing that money to $20,000, and now we want to take that money out. We have to pay taxes on it. So let's assume that today our tax bracket is 25%. Let's say state and federal combination, and in the future, let's say our tax bracket's also going to be 25%. So we're just thinking, hey, our taxes are pretty much going to stay exactly the same. So if we pay 25% on $20,000, that means we're going to pay $5,000 in taxes, and we're going to net $15,000 out of this. Now, if that's our situation, we think our tax bracket is going to be 25% now and also 25% in the future. Let's compare that to how that works if we do a Roth. Okay, so on a Roth, we're going to put $10,000 in, and we're going to pay the taxes up front. So we're going to pay 25%, so $2,500, which means we have $7,500 to invest up front. And let's say over the same period of time, we end up doubling that. So 7,500 times 2 is $15,000, and we have zero tax on that. And so at this point, those two things are exactly the same. So sometimes people in the past have talked about Roth versus traditional and said, okay, well, if you're younger, you should do Roth, and if you're older, you should do traditional. And that may be true because of income brackets. Maybe in a lower income tax bracket when you're younger and a higher income tax bracket when you're higher. But in terms of time, no amount of time is going to change this. So we could have doubled our money over 1 year or 10 years or 20 years, assuming we have the same investment in both places. Both accounts are going to get the same rate of return. And in this situation here, where we, let's say, hypothetically double an account over some period of time, if our tax bracket doesn't change, that's not going to change the amount that we're going to have net to ourselves. Now, in the future, if we did this and say, okay, in the future, we're going to be, instead of a 25% bracket, we're only going to be in a 15% bracket, then that's going to change things accordingly. But, if our brackets are going to be the same, then there's no difference between Roth or traditional. Okay, so the fourth thing we're going to talk about here is going to be investing. And I'm not going to take too deep of a dive on this. I've done it in other videos where I really get into some detail here, but there's a couple things I think everybody should know about as it relates to investments inside your 401k plans. So the first thing that a lot of 401k plans have now are what are called these target date funds, and those have kind of been sort of the easy button that you can kind of put the money in a target date fund. The idea is that you pick a date or a fund that has a date that corresponds with the year or close to the year that you may retire. So if I pick a 2040 retirement date fund, then the goal of that fund should be that they're going to manage that in an asset allocation that's going to progressively get more conservative as it moves closer to that 2040 date. And it's going to have a mix of pretty much everything. It's going to have some stock or equity funds. It's going to have some bond funds, maybe some international. And again, as it gets closer to that date, it's going to get a little bit more conservative. A couple things about target date funds. Number one is that these aren't guaranteed, and I think that was a big myth that some people believed, is that these target date funds had some kind of a maturity date, like a bond or something that said, okay, you're going to get a certain amount of money or whatever at that date. But that is absolutely not true. Your money is still in an asset allocation. It's going to have some stocks. It's going to have some bonds. And like for 2022, for last year, both stocks and bonds actually pretty much across the board lost money. And so even though you had that diversification, those portfolios still probably went down in 2022. So take a look at your target date funds, really understand what's in them. So if you're going to take that road, maybe understand what is that asset allocation, because there can be a lot of variance between one company's 2040 fund and another company. So you may have a 401k plan, your spouse may have a 401k plan, and you may have the same 2040 funds, but yours is from one company and theirs is from another, and you might have 70% stocks and they might have 30% stocks, or vice versa. So really kind of get in there, understand what that is, know that those are not guaranteed, and they're just like any other kind of asset allocation type of portfolio. So the other option that you would have is you can kind of pick your own funds. And so most 401k plans have a menu of options. Some have a lot of options. Some have just a small handful of options. But again, this is something that you're going to want to either maybe seek some professional help on, or know a little bit about what you're doing and how to do asset allocation, how much money you want to have in stocks versus bonds, if you want to have international in there, what kinds of stocks, what kinds of bonds. There's a lot of different factors there. But for me, I'm a professional, obviously, so I like to choose my own funds. I like to have that kind of control, because there's things that maybe I want to overweight or underweight based on different things that we're seeing in the market. But that's another option that you might have. Another thing is you might have something called a self-directed fund or option, and this is something that not all 401k plans have, but they are becoming more and more common as well. But a self-direct fund allows you to kind of open a separate account within your 401k. All self-directed accounts are maybe a little bit different, but some allow you to buy individual stocks. So if you like to do that, if you want to pick a stock or two or a handful of companies and you want to be a lot more control in there, some of them allow you to pick stocks. Some of them allow you to pick ETFs or exchange traded funds, which can give you, open up a big universe of different funds that they trade like stocks. There's some risks and things with those. Some of them could be very aggressive. Some of them could be more conservative, just like the other funds in your portfolio there. But it can give you some more choices. And some of them also have more mutual funds. So you may be able to kind of go off menu and pick other mutual funds that weren't part of that core list. Again, not all 401k plans have this. Some of them have restrictions for if it's available or how much of your overall portfolio can be into that. But that's another option that could give you some choices that may not be available. And then another thing I'll say too, as we wrap up the investments, is risk tolerance. Now, everybody's going to be a little bit different. Some people want to be a lot more conservative. Some people want to be more aggressive. But what I would definitely want to say that everybody should be aware of is as you're moving closer to retirement, understand, what the cash flow requirements of your portfolio are going to be as you go into retirement. So if you're 1 or 2 years away from retirement, are you going to need to take money from your 401k plan to support your lifestyle expenses? How much are you going to need to take out? So my philosophy, as we start getting in within a couple of years of that retirement date, we want to be looking forward to what are the cash flow needs of that portfolio. And you want to start building, we're not going to talk about it too much here, but you want to start building a bucket strategy where you're going to keep maybe 2 years of cash flow needs liquids. You're going to have that in like a money market, for example, something very, very safe or very short term. Maybe another 3 to 5 years in kind of a middle bucket that would be, more fixed income oriented. So it could be bonds and things like that. And there's, again, there's a lot more nuance to this. But, if you have a portfolio that maybe you've had for 25, 30 years or more, where you've been getting good returns, you've been growing your portfolio, and you're in this growth bucket, and you don't have anything over here, just know as you get closer to retirement, you're going to want to shift some of the portfolio to be a little bit more conservative so you can deal with some of those future cash flow needs that you're going to have. Number 5 is rollovers. And there's a few things that I want to talk about here if you're thinking about doing a rollover from your 401k plan to an IRA account. The first thing I want to talk about are basically 4 key options that you have when deciding whether or not to do a rollover. And the first one is very simply to do nothing. And there's a few reasons for this, but basically, even if you've separated service, even if you've retired, or even if you hit 59 and a half or 65 or some other key age, you don't have to move the money from your 401k plan to an IRA account. You don't have to get it out of there. So if you like your 401k plan, you can just leave the money there. Another really good reason for leaving the money in the 401k plan is if you've separated service after age 55, but before you're 59 and a half. One thing that a 401k plan allows you to do is take penalty-free withdrawals as long as you separate service after age 55. So that could give you some options for early retirement there. Number 2 is that you can roll the money over to a new 401k. And so if you are going back to work, if you've retired or separated service and you have a new company and they have a 401k plan that allows for rollovers, you can just simply roll your old 401k plan over into your new one. Some things that you want to consider there, of course, is you want to consider the costs. You want to consider the investment options and any other restrictions that you may have on that new 401k plan if you move the money over into the new one. But it can be a great option for somebody that just wants to have their accounts consolidated together. You're going to be making contributions to the new 401k anyway, so getting that old one moved over and consolidated may be beneficial for you to do that. But just understand what the costs are, the investment options, and making sure that you understand all of that. Number 3 is you can roll it over to an IRA account. And there can be some pretty good reasons for doing that as well. One thing is that most IRA accounts are going to give you virtually an unlimited number of investment options, whereas most of these 401k plans, even the ones that have maybe the self-directed option, they're going to be a little bit more limited on investment choices with that. So you can roll it over to a new to an IRA account. A couple of other things that could give you some advantage to that is you could get you could maybe do a Roth conversion. And so a lot of 401k plans will allow you to do an in-plan Roth conversion, but not all of them do yet. So if you're looking to do a Roth conversion and your plan doesn't allow for that, by moving it to an IRA account could give you that ability to do a Roth conversion. We also talked about that after-tax account. And so if you've been building up money or you've been putting money into that after-tax bucket and you want to get that money over to a Roth IRA account, that's a good way to do that. It's really, maybe one of the better ways to do that, although some plans may allow you to do that inside the plan as well, but that's not as common anymore to allow that. And then the 4th option is you can just cash it out. Now, if you cash it out, of course, there's going to be some taxes. There possibly could be some penalties if you're not at least 55 yet, if you're taking that money out. So you want to be aware of that. Cashing it out is usually not the best option, but some type of a rollover, or at the very least leaving it inside the current 401k plan, I think, is usually the better option. So anyway, there you have it. Those are 5 things to kind of think about for your 2023 401k strategy. Hope you got a lot out of the video. If you like what you saw here today, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want to learn more about what we do at Money Evolution, we can check out some of the links below. We've got our Wealth Vision financial plan, our Retirement Time Machine online course, and some great free resources. We'll have links to all of that down in the description below. So thank you very much, and I'll look forward to seeing you back in our next video.